Welcome to the Benson Wealth Podcast. I take complex financial and economic topics and make it accessible to the everyday listener. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Benson Wealth Podcast. My name is Drew Benson. I am the president and founder of Benson Wealth Management and a senior wealth advisor with Raymond James. I'm also the co-managing partner for True North Wealth Management Group, which is a platform for independent wealth advisors. I'm a former economist, and I'm currently a certified financial planner and wealth advisor. So today is the True North edition. So I am going to interview a really good friend of mine and an associate with us here at True North, Patrick Hammond. So Pat came to True North a year ago. So he's essentially at his 1 year anniversary, and we're going to dig into what was it like to leave one of the big investment firms and go the independent route through Raymond James and within our company, True North Wealth Management Group, which like I mentioned, I co-lead with my business partner, Jason Nero. And one of the reasons we wanted to share the story of Patrick's departure from his old firm and how his experience went with us here over here at True North was there's a lot of you that listen to this podcast that are fellow advisors, and many of you have contemplated for a long time, should I go independent? And I know I had those feelings as an advisor where it had been several years in the making of me feeling like maybe the best route for my career is to go independent. And I can tell you that it was by far, of all of my decisions in my professional life, is by far the best and most important decision that I made for me and for my family, but especially for my clientele. Pat had an extraordinarily successful transition and did it the right way. And that's why, particularly for the advisors that are listening to this today, I want you to hear what it was like for Pat, the reasons that he decided to leave and become independent, and what it's been like for him to sit inside our group within True North Wealth Management Group. And by the way, if you are thinking about going independent, we'd like you to seriously consider True North Wealth Management Group, because the thing about being an independent advisor is it can be quite lonely and you can be on an island. What makes us unique is that we give you the independence to self-brand. We give you the independence to make staffing and important decisions. We give you the independence to open your own branch and own real estate. We give you the full independence and freedom to be a true independent wealth advisor. But we also you also won't be just left on an island. You're actually going to be a part of a broader group where we will provide camaraderie, but we also provide advice. We provide a blueprint from going from the old firm to the new firm. And listen, we've made great decisions when we left, and we made decisions that we could have done better, and you learn from your mistakes. And so any of the decisions that we made that we feel like could have been much more ideal, we're going to share with you if you decide to join us, so that we can play a part in helping you, if you're going to leave, helping you have the most successful transition humanly possible. But again, I think you'll enjoy this conversation with Patrick. He's a phenomenal guy. He's a close friend, and he has done exceptionally well on the independent side. Hey, Pat.
Drew,
great to see you today,
what's going on,
man.
brother? Good to see you, man.
How have you been?
Good as always.
Awesome.
You're looking good. I like the lion in the back there.
I'm very proud. I'm very proud of my line. I get a lot of compliments for my logo. I'm proud of it.
Yeah. It's strong. It's strong branding right there. Very strong branding.
Exactly. Hard to beat the lion.
Hell yeah.
So, Pat, it's been almost a year as we record this. You're right at your anniversary of going independent and joining us here at True North.
Yep.
Let's walk through your journey, because I get asked questions all the time, like, what is it like to go independent? What are the implications? And
Definitely.
I thought this would be just a really great opportunity for you to share your experience. So let's kind of go through this chronologically, and I'll start from the top. And I think this is what goes through so many advisors' heads is, what are the precipitating factors that for you led to wanting to leave, and maybe what were the final one or two catalysts that was like, okay, I need to do this. But let's start from the top. At what point did you decide? Or were there moments earlier in the process where you thought, I think I am ready to actually make the jump and go independent? So what was your experience like?
Yeah. So I think for advisors that are watching this this recording here. So there are things for me that pushed me away from my prior firm, and then there are things that pulled me away. But I'll start with the thing that first, kind of put me on the radar to think about going independent. Something that kind of pulled me away, and that was the ability to own my own book of business. Because where I was previously, I thought that I owned my book from where I stood. And after doing some, due diligence and having conversations with people on the independent side, I quickly learned that I did not own my own clientele and the business relationships that I personally cultivated. So everyone has different unique situations, but where I kind of came from in the beginning is nothing was really handed to me when I started my business. So I started everything grassroots, knocking on doors, cold calling people, beginning of COVID. And I believe I built a pretty successful business in a short period of time. And I just didn't love the idea that I ultimately did not have the control or say over that business that I cultivated at the end of the day. And that kind of proceeded into some other things, that, kind of got me thinking about making the jump. But I would say that's probably the biggest one there, Drew, that, initially got me thinking.
Yeah, the feeling that like I've put in all this hard work, I've built these relationships, and even if you've inherited some relationships, you've done the work to cultivate it and to make them even better, and that ultimately you don't own it. Explain for people that maybe don't fully understand, and I've actually had conversations with advisors that are at captive firms where they don't own their clients. Mm-hmm. What does that actually mean, though? Like, what's the difference? Because someone may say, Pat, like, well, they're my clients, they're under my FA number, they're a part of my branch. Like, what does it actually mean to own your book of business when you're an independent advisor?
So, I mean, I think there's a few different ways to look at it, but at the end of the day, what I would say to those people is like, you're either building the equity for yourself or you're going to build the equity for the firm that you work for if you're in a captive environment. So I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong, but for me, making a personal business decision, if I'm putting in that time and effort to cultivate relationships, I'm putting in my blood, sweat, and tears to, try to help people out, I wanted that equity at the end of the day to go to me. And what that really looks like, Drew, in my opinion, is for me, God forbid, if something happened to me and I wasn't in the capacity or the state to work anymore, mm-hmm. then I would want to have some leverage if I had to go into some sort of an exit situation because I couldn't, serve those clients anymore, right? So mm-hmm. I'm the one that's making that decision on mm-hmm. where do I want that book to go, who is going to be working with my clients in a, God forbid, very bad situation. And then, really the financial implications of that too. I'm the one that's going to set and negotiate the price, not my employer. So that's just one aspect.
Absolutely.
And I think that's probably the big one. There's obviously other little things that go along with that. But, again, at the end of the day, if you're truly a business owner, part of being a business owner is you're building equity in your practice. So why would you build that for someone else instead of yourself?
So were there other reasons for you, Pat, of why you decided to make the jump? Definitely. What other catalysts existed?
So one of the things that we've been doing here with True North, and just for people watching it, so we're affiliated with True North, but my practice is branded as Guardian Financial Services. So one of the biggest changes that we've been able to implement since being independent is we have full control, and autonomy over the website that we, basically create words and content on. So our focus has been on the SEO side of the internet. So being able to go in and add in, pages to the website, customizing it very specifically with certain verbiage and words that we want to do. And then, being able to kind of take that and then apply it to, Google search, which that can help quite a bit if people are looking up certain terms online. And with our prior firm, we didn't have the control or the ability, or we had very limited ability to manipulate and change some of the things within the website that if you have the ability to do that on the independent side, which we do, that's been a huge that's been a huge thing where we'll get anywhere from 3 to 4 call-ins a week, and that translates into
Wow.
Anywhere from $500,000 to maybe up to $1 million in new business that we bring in just on that one little thing right there. And then there are other things too that we're working on with video advertising, Facebook advertising, and I know you can do that if you're in a captive environment to some degree, but what you don't realize is you're getting a watered down version of that, and you're not getting the full, you're not gonna get the full capabilities there. And what I would ask anyone watching this video is, if you cannot make a video, right, and put it on the internet at your current firm, you really need to ask yourself, what are you doing there? Because we are in the age of the internet, and it's ridiculous if you can't put a video out there to try to brand yourself or try to meet clients where they're at, which is obviously online.
Yeah, and look, I think that the key difference between a lot of these captive, sort of bigger investment firms is that the brand is the firm, right? And so you can customize it to an extent for you, but ultimately it's you promoting the firm itself. And I understand the incentive of why they would do that, but I think for a lot of advisors, because this is such a relational business, and if we can just be brutally honest for a minute, most people work with the advisor because they like the advisor. It has less to do with the firm that they're affiliated with. Now I'm not saying that the firm doesn't matter, because it certainly does, and we're affiliated with Raymond James, and I'm very happy at Raymond James, and I think it's been an incredibly good fit for us on so many different levels. So it's not that the firm doesn't matter, but it's the difference between who's really the face of the organization. Is it the big investment firm, or is it you, Pat Hammond? Is it Drew Benson? And I want to second something that you said. I mean, hey, we're having a podcast interview here that's going to go on YouTube. And if you're watching this on YouTube right now, or you're getting it through potentially other means. We can be so unique in the way that we design and curate content that is tailored so that people can learn who we are. I mean, it's really nice if you think about it. You're going to hire an advisor. It's nice to say, hey, I'm going to listen to this guy's podcast. I'm going to read the person's newsletter. We've started, at least in my practice, we've started a newsletter that we're working on. We produce our own proprietary content for our blog, and then obviously we're doing this podcast as well. And it's a really unique way to engage in the modern age. And just to second what you said, so many firms either don't allow any of this outright, or if they do allow it, it's with a ton of constraint and control over what you can and can't say. And I just really appreciate Raymond James, because True North, which sits within the Raymond James system, we have a lot of flexibility and freedom to actually design content for potential clients and existing clients that I think gives us a really unique edge in the modern digital age, right?
100%. Yeah, I mean, look, we live in the internet age, right? So, if you ask most of your clients, where are you getting information outside of your advisor or you? Like, I run into people all the time, and they're like, yeah, I watched this guy on YouTube, or, I saw someone make a video on Facebook and it came across my feed. And you got to really ask yourself, in the next 10 years, is that only going to accelerate, or is that going to decelerate or stay the same? And I think we all can agree it's only going to accelerate. So I think what you're doing, when I first saw you transition to Raymond James and you started the podcast, the first thing that came to my head is, I'm like, that's exactly what we need to be able to do, because that's how you build your brand, and that's how people in the next 10 years are going to find you more and more, right? Because 10 years from now, baby boomers are going to be, mostly fully retired, and now you're going to have that next generation where probably see some sort of a transfer of wealth. And I think that younger generations, people younger than 45, are more comfortable consuming information online so they can make decisions.
Something I think about as a sort of a metaphor is that, like, when you first start out in life, you buy the inexpensive suit off the rack, and it doesn't fit great, but it does the job, right? And then you reach a point as you gain a little bit of steam and you want to up your game in terms of your presence, and maybe you go and actually get it tailored, a nice, I've invested in a couple of nice tailored suits that when I need to really look my best, it's a bespoke look. And I think there's a lot of parallel in the financial industry where, as I've interacted more and more with higher net worth individuals, and let's just face it, as you grow your business, you start to tailor more to the higher net worth. They're looking for that bespoke boutique type of a feel, and they're not looking for the sort of box store feel, something that's that feels off the rack, and that's appropriate, right? Because I think as your wealth grows, your needs grow, and that's what I love about what we're creating, is that I think we're trying to create a more of a boutique, bespoke, customized feel for our clientele. And based on what I've read, that is exactly what clients are looking for. And I think that gives us an incredible competitive advantage when it comes to actually finding people with a higher net worth that are looking for specific investment needs. How do you feel about that?
You're talking about specifically strategies, products that we can kind of bring to the table for clients. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. It's funny because when we first came over here, it's almost like we were playing in this very small sandbox, and we had very limited options. And I understand that some of these firms in the captive space are starting to open up some of these new, strategies to their advisors, but they're probably doing that in a very limited capacity, and maybe they're watering it down from past experience, just kind of seeing how that channel moves. But when we came over here, I was really blown away with digging into it. And, these are all things I've learned about through credentials I've earned, but private credit, private equity, again, just hedging a portfolio is crazy, as simple as that sounds, but that can be
especially
a real
in these markets.
Yeah.
Especially right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, I'll share this, but, I had a situation a few weeks ago. A client was, nervous with the market, understandably so. And he asked me to put forth a solution that involved, protecting his downside to some degree. So we went to the Raymond James, back office. They kind of put a proposal together and said, if the client wanted to hedge their U.S. equities up to a certain percentage, here's what you'd have to do. And being able to present that to the client was a breath of fresh air.
Game changer.
He ultimately didn't end up doing it because it, kind of settled him down a little bit, but he loved the idea, knowing that if push came to shove and we had to explore a situation like that because he didn't want to sell a bunch of his stocks and realize capital gains, that was a tool that we could pull out in our tool belt to service him. And I agree. I think a lot of higher net worth people would definitely value that.
Well, and this is something I've learned, and for the longest time, we sort of, and look, I am sort of an old school Warren Buffett buy and hold kind of guy. Like, I see the absolute merit, and I think as an investor, you do amazingly well if you're disciplined and you ride the waves. But not every investor is the same. We've talked about this offline a whole bunch, Pat. 100%. And I think it's our responsibility as advisors to understand their emotional constitution and who they are as individuals. And not everyone responds the same. So not everyone has the gut to just be buy and hold. And so as you meet, and I just think this from a compliance standpoint is absolutely critical. Yeah. When you meet people and you realize, okay, there are other solutions that we can utilize, and you don't always have to go back to the well of like, hey, go walk your dog and turn the news off. And yeah, there's times to do that, and I get it, and you've got to be disciplined. But then there's times where you can put in place really thoughtful solutions that still give them upside potential, that have some hedging on the downside, that meets the clients where they are specifically in their financial journey, which I think in the long run for those individuals will probably produce better results because they're not well suited to the volatility. And something that I've been really blown away about is all the thoughtful financial innovation. There's bad financial innovation out there, but there's so much thoughtful financial innovation that has changed dramatically over the last decade, even over the last 5 years, for us to actually engage in thoughtful diversification with clients. And I didn't know it until I came over to the independent side, all the things that I was capable of doing. And I'm so grateful. It's one of those, better to have it, not need it, than need it, not have it. That's often the situation. And at least we can present these, like that situation. I know it involved using some level of options. It's the financial derivative of that is it's nice to know that we actually have those options available for clients if it meets their specific need.
9 out of 10 times they're probably not going to need it, and you're right. Like 9 out of 10 times typically the best approach is don't get overly emotional and reactive with the market. But me and you both know that there are people, regardless of how much, let's say, logic and reinforcement you're trying to bring to the table, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter to them. So it may logically make sense, but not everyone operates logically. So you need to be able, as an advisor, to bring a different solution to the table, even though you and I may fundamentally think that it would be better for them to maybe take a more longer term approach. But what I always said is, if they're not going to stick with it anyways, right? And again, it's obviously relative, right? Some person could look at like a 5% decrease and they think that's the end of the world, and you have another person who looks at a 20% decrease in their portfolio and it's not a big deal.
Well, they're calling and they're like, "Hey, I've got money, I'd like to invest."
Yeah, right.
There's the people that are just truly opportunists.
Yeah, man. I mean, but I've had conversations with people where they're down 5% and they're like concerned, and again, not more context to that conversation, but the point is, if they're not going to stick with the strategy anyways, and you can bring something to the table, maybe that's like some sort of an index strategy or a buffered strategy, or you're throwing in some of these option based strategies, and that kind of makes the ride a little bit smoother for them, even though they would hypothetically in the long run do better. If they don't stick with it, who cares, right? Who cares if they're not going to ultimately stick with the advice that is logical and most financial professionals would agree with? Then it's like the old saying, if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, like, did it actually fall? It's like, who cares, right? If they don't do it, who cares?
Yeah, I think one of my critiques of our industry is that we tend to look at things in a vacuum without other extenuating circumstances that can completely change the dynamic. And it's called human nature. It's called fear. It's called behavioral finance. And those components are not always baked into the equation for a lot of advisors. And I think, I appreciate you, Pat, because you're an incredibly thoughtful, intelligent guy. And we've had so many dynamic conversations, off camera, where we talk about these things and we talk about different client situations and trying to meet their particular needs, which I think is very powerful. And I think we owe it to our clients to behave that way. And I think we're the best that we can be for our clients, and it gives them what I hope is a better future ultimately. I want to get back to any final pain points, and then I want to get into the transition and what it was like to actually jump from the old firm.
Yeah, some of the pain points, like things like hiring and staffing. So, I know it sounds simple, but look, if you're on the W-2 side and you're being compelled by your firm to basically, they're telling you what you have to pay your employees, right? Like you're not a business owner, right? If your firm is telling you you have to pay your employees X, then you're not a business owner, right? If you had an employee and let's just say it wasn't a good fit and you wanted to move on, guess what? They may say, well, too bad, you're going to have to put up with it, right? And again, I'm being facetious there, but seriously, hiring decisions, payment decisions, those are definitely pain points. Again, if you want to build out a new office, if you want to own the office, like you will actually want to own the real estate, and then there's a situation where your firm that may not want you to own that real estate, because if you ever did leave, now you own that real estate. So those are little things to think about if you're on the captive side, and you may be okay with that, right? But just understand, don't fool yourself and say that you are a business owner, because you are in fact a W-2 employee. And if you're okay with that, that's great. But for the people who want to be business owners, you have to look yourself in the mirror and realize you're not in that. You may not be in the situation that you think you're in.
Yeah, awesome points. Okay, so I remember the day clearly, and the day you transitioned. So walk us through, what was it like the the couple weeks leading up to the transition, because you know your date, right? It's locked in your brain. You're kind of preparing for it. What was it like for you from an emotional standpoint as it was leading up to the transition day? And then talk to us about the actual transition day.
It's wild. Yeah. So the one thing too, for anyone watching this is I consider myself someone, I have a lot of, emotional resilient and intestinal fortitude, emotional resilience. Like going through a transition is going to test you in so many different ways. And I'll say at the end of the day, it was 1,000% worth it. But you need to go into it with like, you're going to war, right? It's like life or death. Like, hey, your career, your client's well-being, your everything is on the line, right? And a couple weeks leading up, it was like just a ton of it, adrenaline, anxiety, like the testosterone's obviously pumping through the veins. And I can't, until you go through it, you won't actually know that feeling. The closest thing I can describe to that feeling, but I think that the transition was way more intense. If you ever played competitive sports, like high school football or like a big wrestling match or a big baseball game, and you're going out in the tunnel right before the game and you get into the stadium and everyone's looking at you.
Yeah,
and
totally.
You see the other team and you're like, your blood is just pumping. Like that's the feeling right there, but way more intense because that's sports, right? That's a game. And now this is your livelihood. This is your career. But it's funny, like anything, Drew, it's like when I look back on it, as much as it was, extremely challenging, I look back on it fondly like, damn, yeah, we did that. Like we did it. We were successful. Beautiful. There's so many more things I'm sure you'll ask in the podcast, but yeah, I can't stress enough how intense that event is.
It's funny. I was a kickoff returner in high school. I was kick and punt returner. And when we would receive the ball, I was the lead returner, and I just remember getting those like I'm in a vomit sort of feeling of like, and then the ball just floats in the air under the lights. It's Friday night and it's floating in the air, and you're like, here we go.
Yeah, that's it. That's the feeling. That's
what's funny is when I was transitioning, a year before you. I was like, man, this feels like a high school football game, like that. Like I don't know what to do with it. Then you catch the ball, you march it up the field, you do as best as you can, and then I played running back too, and so then I'd get that first handoff, and then you settle in. Right. Yeah, so you just kind of have to get through the jitters of the first few plays. And that's like, okay, game on, let's go. And then the nerves finally subside. That was what it was like for me for the first couple of days, is just trying to get through the anxiety of it all.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Like it was, it's intense, but like, again, going into a transition, you definitely have to have, I know, Drew, you're big on this, have a strong why. Like, hey, you can't, if you're going to make a shift, and just, again, you got to be honest with yourself. Like, obviously, it's a big decision. You really need to make sure that you have a strong why to get to the other side, not only for yourself, but for your clients as well, right? So you need to be 100% certain the reason why you're making this decision is 1,000% going to put your clients in a better situation, and then thus put you in a better situation to serve.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you have to speak the conviction. When I spoke to every single person, I had passion in my voice about why this made sense for them and for me. That I felt that everyone was going to win in this dynamic. And frankly, if it didn't make sense for my clients, it was definitely not going to make sense for me because it wouldn't have worked out well. So you start clients, right? So you get in, you go through the whole licensing process, which is also a whirlwind on transition day. You start making phone calls. What were clients' reactions when they first heard? Like, talk us through the first few phone calls.
Yeah. So just anyone going through this too, just understand that there's legal and compliant ways to go through a transition.
Yeah.
Certainly, you're going to want to consult with an attorney if you're doing
Correct.
This. You're not going to, definitely do not do this on a whim. So just understand, first and foremost, there are right and wrong ways to do a transition. But
absolutely,
assuming you're doing it the legal and correct way, when we first started making the announcement to clients that we've left and now have affiliated with a new firm. That was the big thing. And again, that was another big thing going into transition. It's like, what are people going to say? Are they going to be happy? Are they going to be negative? Are they gonna, So
Yeah.
I would say, Drew, the way it broke down is probably like 70% of people that I called my really good clients, they were like, all right, what are we going to do? Like, they were like, hey, so what does that mean for us? Can we come with you? Right. Or like, when can we treat, they basically is like, can we move our money to you? Right. And then, from there, like they've indicated that they want to continue the relationship, and that's where we would hand the phone off to kind of get them, get their information collected and get them situated.
Yeah, because they have to solicit you if you're with a non-protocol firm.
Correct.
Right? And so, yeah, you make the announcement and you hope they take it well, right?
Yeah. So I would say 70% of people, it was like, wow, okay, that was better. That's great. I wasn't expecting that. There were 20% of people that were on the line that they were upset a little bit, but they were curious, and they're like, can we talk about this in a few days? And then there was probably 10% of people that were definitely had a negative reaction, but most of them did end up coming around. And then there were a smaller portion of them that, decided that they, kind of wanted to stay where they're at. But, one of the pieces of advice you gave me, Drew, going through it is you're going to have some people that you think are going to be like, all right, what am I going to do here? And then they say, I need to take a minute to think about it. And then you're going to get some people, you're like,
some prizes.
You're like, should I even call these people? They're going to and then they're like,
they're going to be so mad at me.
Yeah, right. So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and it's a sprint and a marathon at the same time when you're going through it. It's a sprint in the sense that you need to make sure you're being efficient with your time. You're proactively making that announcement to as many clients as you can with the time that's given to you. And then it's also a marathon in the sense that, depending on your clientele and how many conversations that you're going to be having, there's going to be a lot of meetings coming in after that, right? And there's going to be a lot of follow-up calls if they ask you to, stay in contact with them. So, that was probably the one element I underestimated going through the transition, is just how long that transition ultimately is, right? Because you're talking you're going to have that initial stage, the sprint, where you're basically making the announcement. And then the marathon is now people are moving their accounts with you, right? You have to get their financial plans back up to speed. You have to.
That takes time.
It takes time. Get the beneficiaries back. You got to get their ACHs back, their tax withholdings, all these little things that are, that took you years to kind of get accumulated. You end up doing that in 6 months when you, start bringing your clientele over. So that was definitely that kind of wears on you more than that initial sprint, I think, because it's such a long process.
Yeah, and you can't take any client information. At least that was the situation we were in, where we were banned from doing so. So you have to, if they want to come with you, right? You make the announcement and they say, "Hey, can we follow?" Then what happens is, then you've got to now you got to say, "Oh, I got to get all your stuff again. I don't have any of your stuff anymore."
Right.
And clients were generally understanding, but there was a few instances where I kind of had to walk them through why I was unable to take any of their information.
Yeah, right.
And then you have to rebuild it. I think what I told you at the time, and what I would tell anyone that's transitioning or considering it, is that it's about 8 weeks of intense load, right? You're setting the appointments, and that's if it's going well. I mean, the reality is if it's not going well, it won't be 8 weeks. It's going to be a much shorter time frame. Yeah. But if you're doing it appropriately and you follow the strategies that we've created at True North, we have a blueprint in place. We've designed a very, very careful blueprint which you followed, and we're grateful to you for that. Of if you follow the process properly, if you stay super compliant and you're careful about the legal side of it, and you're by the book, what can happen is incredible success. But that's going to take 8 weeks. Yeah. It's going to be 8 weeks of a grind. My experience was about the 3-month mark. We started to get back into a normal cadence, normal rhythm that we had with clients before. Was that pretty similar for you?
Yeah, definitely. I would say 3 months, and then for us, it probably that 3 months is the first milestone, and then the second is probably the 6-month mark, because once you get to the 3-month mark, then you start meeting with all the people that came with you, And that's where you're getting everything back up to speed, the financial plan, all the, ACH documents, all those little things, and beneficiaries. Then you meet with people for 3 to 4 months, and then once you get to 6 or 7 months, if everything's going well, that's where you're able to kind of take a breath and be like, oh my God, I can relax for a second here.
Right.
But yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. But yeah, it was crazy, man. Not to steal your thunder, but so anyone watching the episode, when we made the transition to True North, one of the biggest things that attracted me and
that was my next question,
Tyler, to Drew and Jason is we knew them from our prior firm. They were in a very so when I came into the business, Drew was my performance coach, and then Jason shortly after ended up being what was called our regional leader, who's essentially the head person in the Legion, and Drew was the number 2. And again, I'm not trying to butter Drew's bread here too much, but Drew is someone I looked up to a ton. I considered him a mentor coming into the business. Same with Jason, top of the line dudes. Honestly, anyone that ever asked me about you guys, I'm like, they were certainly the main reason why we decided to come to True North, because we obviously had conversations with other firms just to kind of see what they offered, and anyone going through a transition, just understand they put packages together for you to come over. And Raymond James had a competitive package, but the biggest value add, in all honesty, was we had friends that were going to be helping us, and they brought the infrastructure to really help us excel in the transition, where Drew and Jason, they dedicated their staff to help us onboard clients who decided to follow us, which I can't stress enough. If you're watching this, whether you go independent or not, but if you do go independent and you're looking for a good place to kind of get plugged in, because the name of the game is speed and getting that percentage up of those clients, having that back end support where you have people who've gone through a transition and they know what to expect and they know the process, that's invaluable. That was worth 10 times, whatever other packages that we could have gotten from other firms. So, because at the end of the day, it's like you want to keep those clients, you want to make sure that they have a relatively smooth transition and nothing gets screwed up. And that is certainly what you guys brought when we went through our transition.
Well, I appreciate all the kind words, brother. The other thing I would say is that, Jason and I, who run True North together, we've walked in your shoes.
Yeah.
I'm going to totally butcher the line, but one of my favorite movies is Moneyball, and one of the players on the Athletics said to Billy Beane, who is the GM, he's like, I've never seen a GM talk to a player like that before. He's like, you've never seen a GM who was a player before. Something along those lines. And it was a really powerful moment, because he was trying to get through to the player that he understood what he was going through as an athlete, and this player was aging and was trying to get the last few good years out in the majors, and Billy Beane was trying to get the best from him, but he was able to translate well to this player. Spacing on the player's name, I'll think of it in a minute. He was able to get through to him because he's like, I've walked in your shoes. I know what it's like to take sliders and curveballs and fastballs at the plate as a batter. I know what it's like to age in the sport and get frustrated. Like, I know all the things. You can listen to me. And what I would say to anyone that's considering this is that, Jason and I are actively recruiting people to the firm, and that is going quite well right now, by the way. And as we continue to find talent, we know what it's like, and a lot of people don't that are in this business, because they've never actually either they've never been an advisor, or they've never actually gone through a transition, and there's unique pain points. One of the reasons I want to stress, Pat, and I think you realize this as well, is that one of the reasons that we feel like we have a lot of value to add as True North is that we would have done some things differently, but you don't know what you don't know. And so there are parts of the transition process that could have gone more smoothly. We've learned, right? You're either winning or you're learning, and we learn from some of our mistakes, and we made those new protocols for people like you so that the transition is way smoother. And so you had a fabulous transition. How are you in terms of AUM? Are you above? Are you right at? Are you below? Like, how did that go, and how long did it take you to get to where you are?
Yeah. So when we went into the transition, I think it was either you or Jason. You guys said expectations is if you can get back to your production, AUM and production are highly correlated, but if you can get back to your AUM/production within a year or at the year mark, then you're doing pretty good. Mm-hmm. And for us, for me in particular, my production got back to where it was from my prior firm within 6 months. I believe it's
incredible.
5 or 6 month mark. Now we had less households, right? Because some of those people that we didn't take, or for whatever reason, we just thought they were better where they were at, so we didn't end up making a call to them. So we got back to where we were within 5 or 6 months, and then today, obviously we're in a down market, but we are, quite a bit ahead of where our production and where our assets were just 1 year ago when we were at our prior firm. So I would say my expectations were if I could get back to where I was at the year mark, I would be happy. And everything, obviously where I'm at today, everything feels like it's gravy, right? We're actively bringing on new clients. We've had some clients that actually didn't come with us that ended up reaching out to me like months later and said, hey, I'm not happy where I'm at. Can I come with you? Even though they initially said, I'm all set. So that's been kind of a cool thing too, that, some of these old people that I, haven't really thought about, they're now reaching back out to me because they know me as someone that's very active when markets are down and markets are volatile. And I'm in constant communication with them, and they saw the value, or they missed the value. And that's why we're having some of these older clients that initially turned us down come back. So yes.
I had someone reach out. It was 2 years, and they reached out, right? Like they know you're there. And something I would tell to anyone that's looking at becoming an independent advisor is that it doesn't all happen right at once. I would say maybe 70% of what you're hoping for happens within the first quarter, but then a bunch trickles in the second and third quarter. And then there's this weird group that just pops up a year in, and even 2 years later, you might run into 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 clients that were like, we gave this a go, the fit with the new advisor's not going well, and then ultimately they want to move with you. And that's a testament to, again, this is a relationship business, and I think most of the responses that I received, Pat, were more concerned about working with the advisor and less about working with the firm. And again, I'll say it one more time. It's not that the firm doesn't matter. It does. But the advisor, I think, is the number one reason. And I heard that repeatedly throughout the process when I transitioned. Well, were you fearful? And go ahead, and then I want to ask you a follow-up question.
Just one point of reference there. Just understand, if you're watching this, regardless of what firm you're with, like if your firm is telling you, like, if there's messaging around, hey, it's the brand, right? And sometimes it's subconscious. Like you go through the training programs, and it's like, hey, lean on the brand. Like it's been around for X amount of years, and like blah blah blah. And what was certainly different with Raymond James is because this firm is not a place for a lot of, like, let's say, newer people that are just starting off. They've been in the business for a while. It is a little bit more boutique in terms of how it can offer different products. The messaging that I've received from Raymond James is, hey, these are your clients. You guys are the most important people. You're in the seats. We're here to support you. And that was certainly a breath of fresh air. Not to say that our prior firm didn't, stress the importance of like the advisor and client relationship, but
they did.
They did, but I feel like they try to throw in their brand too as the third set of the the third leg of the stool.
Totally.
But at Raymond James, it feels more like, hey, it's you and the client. That's the most important thing. We're kind of here to support you. And like you are our clients, right? As advisors, like we're the clients of the firm. We're here to, make sure that you guys stay happy, so you and your clients stay happy.
So our regional director on the independent side, because Raymond James has an employee channel and a what we call ICD, the Independent Contractors Division, and on the independent side, our regional director refers to us literally as clients.
Yes.
And so there's a level of service that you experience from the regional director and from the team that's put in place that is fantastic. And hopefully they're listening to this, and I've been nothing but thrilled with the support that I've received. And that was the other thing too, Pat, and sorry to digress here for a minute. But the other part of this too is that this is an extremely complex industry with a lot of nuance to it. And that's why we wanted to partner with a firm that could provide the compliance piece for us. It's not like we're completely on an island without the support. Raymond James is powering us behind the scenes. They're giving us access to great investments as well as incredible software. I've been very impressed by the technology specifically at Raymond James. But in addition to all those things, we just have a general support network because we're not at a place where we can provide all those services, right? And so that's why when Jason and I formed True North, when we formed our own independent practices underneath it, Benson Wealth and Nero Wealth, we wanted to do it with a firm that could give us all the back office support that was necessary because we knew our clients needed it and we needed it as well. So it's kind of this nice marriage that we've created here that we're very, very, very proud of. Any regrets?
Zero regrets. So the only regret, someone would say, "Oh, I wish I did it sooner," right? And I think honestly, I believe I did it at the perfect time, and maybe I'm biased, but I felt like if I did it sooner, then I might not have had the base of clients that I would need to get to where I'm at here today. So I think timing wise, it worked out well, but in terms of regrets, I'm happy as a clam, man. I can't believe we have a beautiful office, and it's indescribable being able to walk into something that is truly your own, that you customize to a T. And depending on how you go independent, if you do an office build out, you're doing it how you want to do it. You see everything on the back of my wall. These are things. What's in the back of my wall? If you can see here, I had a client draw me a picture of basically someone, her husband holding a whiskey and a cigar. That's a little piece of art that, I want to be able to have in my office that I wouldn't be able to have where I was previously, at least at the time. So just little things like that, being able to put that custom touch on what is truly yours is, it's a little thing, but I think it goes a long way because it brings more pride in the ownership aspect.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it at the beginning. I love my logo, and it symbolizes a lot for me, and there's a lot of meaning there that I care about, and I get a lot of positive feedback from clients and friends. And so to have my stamp on what I've built is special. But the thing about the independent side is there's a lot of loneliness, and so one of the reasons I'm super thrilled that you and Tyler Lavoie and others that have joined Jay Bukafuska, what I'm super grateful for, though, is that we're building some camaraderie, right? Because that's something I did love about our prior firm because it's full of really amazing people that I miss, right? And I still talk to a lot of them just as friends, but I miss a lot of people. One of the reasons that Jason and I wanted to create True North is because one of the disadvantages of being on the independent side is there's a level of loneliness. There's a lack of collaboration. There's a lack of idea sharing. What is your take on that? Are you enjoying the fact that, and by the way, I'm just asking for compliments for shame on me here, but what would you say regarding the camaraderie piece? Do you miss that as well? And how do you feel like we're doing over here at True North and trying to rebuild something that's similar?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's some things that I I agree. I miss like those general events where we get together and we know what those events are, during summer and like the trips and stuff. So those are certainly things that were like, a negative of leaving, things that I put a lot of value into. But to be fair, there's some things that we would be forced to go to or strongly encouraged to go to that I'm like, I don't want to do this. Right?
Right.
So,
Right.
there's two sides of the coin there. But I would say the camaraderie is huge. And again, that's one of the big reasons why I reached out to you and Jason is I didn't know for sure, but I know you gentlemen and how you guys operate. I'm like, I would think that they're going to try to build something like what we had at our prior firm. And I would say from a camaraderie standpoint and just, a relationship standpoint, like it feels like how we were at our prior firm. Just I feel like we have a stronger bond because, it's kind of like, blood brothers. Like we've been through a lot of the same stuff together.
Been in the trenches together.
We've been in the trenches, right? But I'm excited to see the future, man. Like I know that I think there's a lot of interest in True North, and I think rightfully so. And I think that anyone that is thinking about joining Drew and Jason as the head of True North, I think that camaraderie aspect is something that is and will continue to be built out over time. And I think that all the good things about the camaraderie are going to be in place. And maybe all the things that felt tedious and unnecessary are going to be left behind, right? So there's not going to be like a forcing of, going to meetings or talking about things you don't really talk about. It's more, we're doing this because we like each other as gentlemen and as ladies, and we want to be together because we enjoy each other's company.
Yeah, and look, when we do meet, sometimes it's just to have fun, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll go golfing together or we'll go grab lunch together, just enjoy one another's company. But then there are productive meetings that we do have, and we've been very conscientious because I think the world is saturated with pointless meetings. And whether you're an advisor or not, or whether you're thinking of being an independent advisor, if you're listening to this and you're just in corporate America, you know what I'm talking about, right? Think of all the meetings that are unnecessary. And one of the things that I have been relentless about is slashing every meeting humanly possible. The meetings I care about are the ones with my clients because those are powerful and important. Yep. But outside of the client meetings, I don't want anything that is unnecessary. We don't need meetings to run long. We need meetings to be powerful, productive, but we need them to be infrequent, right? We don't always have to talk just because we have to, quote, check in. Let's talk where we are providing value. And one of the things that we've worked on together is we've created an investment policy committee. We've built customized proprietary investment models, and we're building multiple sleeves of them, and then we collaborate together on those. And so I think what's I'm excited about, and I'm super excited that you're a part of this, Pat, is like we're starting to build meaningful things together. And when we solicit feedback, we're trying to implement that into actual things like real portfolios that can drive how we service and care for our clients so that we're not on an island. What would you say are the biggest advantages? And let me ask this a little bit differently. What is it like for you? Because we keep mentioning that you're part of our group, True North.
Yeah.
What does that actually look like, though? You don't brand as True North. Clients don't necessarily know you're part of True North. So what is it like in terms of your independence, and then what is it like in terms of your connection with True North?
Yeah, I mean, like I just operate my business, Guardian Financial Services. So for anyone watching, I know it's a little confusion, but think about True North as kind of like the parent umbrella, and then you have all these sub umbrellas under True North. So for me and my business partner Tyler, we're Guardian. Drew, you're Benson Wealth. Jason is Nero Wealth. Jay is Tripod. So those all kind of roll up under True North because in the future, and Drew, you'd obviously go speak more to this than me, there's certain things that we can leverage as a group, with more resources that put us in a better position and be able to put our clients in a better position versus if we're all just kind of spread out into, truly independently and having no connections at all. And, in terms of like, how does that like affect us? Like, it's only positive, right? It only, again, as we were talking about, brings that camaraderie aspect in, knowing like, hey, we're a part of something bigger than ourselves. And, you and Jason are leading the way there. And in terms of how I operate my business day to day, like True North has no bearing or no effect on that. Drew, you'll bring like the portfolio models to the table. We can kind of implement those with our clients when appropriate. But there's there's nothing there that like hampers me or prevents me from doing anything I want to do with having me roll up under True North.
Yeah, I mean, our tagline is freedom with autonomy, right? Or independence with autonomy, because we want you to own your book. We want you to make your own decisions. We don't care if you understaff or overstaff. I mean, ultimately, we need you to do a good job. But if you want to take some risk and you want to hire additional people to try to expand and grow, even if your payout is a little bit lower, it's your business. We're not going to tell you how to do it. We're not going to tell you what to do. If you want to be lean and mean and really frugal and not have as much staff, that's as long as you're not getting yourselves into trouble from a compliance standpoint and your clients aren't being taken care of, we don't really care, right? We want you to make the right business decision. So we really try to create a platform where you can make just smart decisions. Let's talk about Raymond James. I'm grateful to my firm to hear, because like True North rolls into Raymond James. So it's, you've got Raymond James, True North, and then you've got all of our subgroups within it. What would you say are the biggest advantages for you since you've moved over to the Raymond James platform?
Biggest advantages is, again, it's just a different dynamic. And even if you're a W-2 at Raymond James, like an employee, I know it's the same dynamic. So if you're in a captive firm, just understand that there is a power, even if it's subtle, like there's a subtle power play going on there between the advisor and then the firm. So again, them being able to compel you on what you can use. Can you have your own website? Can you use your own software? Can you make videos? Like, those are little control things that it's like, if you want to do it, again, too bad, right? If you're in that situation. With Raymond James, the biggest thing, like the biggest breath of fresh air was, and again, there are some parameters there. You can't just go willy-nilly just buying whatever software you want. But, within a lot of reason, if I wanted to go use a different CRM tool from the one that they provide, like they have pre-approved tools that we can migrate over to, or we can submit a request to get approval for a tool that they don't have approval for, but they may make an exception for you. So just being able to have a lot more flexibility in terms of customizing different tools that we can use and how we can integrate that with our clients, and then just I feel like the mindset here with compliance and review is like more like, okay, like it's like we want to see your side of like how you want to implement this, right? So if I wanted to use a tool and their initial reaction is like, well, it's not approved, but let's have a conversation and see, like, maybe we can get you approval here. Maybe we're missing something and maybe we need to make a change to our policy so you can do what you want to do. So you can make a business case to Raymond James that, some firms, most captive firms, like, it's our way or the highway, take it or leave it. So that's been certainly refreshing. And honestly, for me, I feel like Raymond James like leaves us alone for the most part. Like, we're not getting, they give us updates and like, how's the firm doing and leadership changes and stuff like that. But again, they're not forcing you or highly encouraging you to go to things that you may not really care about.
Right. There aren't these strong firm initiatives that you have to abide by or else. And I really appreciate that, because there's times where I'm like, I don't know if I agree with this firm initiative, and I think this doesn't help our clients. I think it hurts them.
Yeah. And again, where we were previously, just certain things that were going on with, things that I felt like it got a little political, like certain policies there that, I disagreed with, but it's like, that isn't my call, right? And not to say that Raymond James doesn't have those things, but if they do, they certainly don't like push it in your face as much as what my prior experience was.
My experience, particularly as I've looked at using certain platforms, is their instinct is to say yes.
Yeah.
Now, I had one situation, I don't even remember the software now, but I had asked to use some sort of software because you have to get it approved if you're going to use it, because we have to be hyper vigilant about client data, et cetera. And I had asked to use, I think I was wanting to get onto something like Apple Podcasts. And I had a discussion with the back office. They ultimately said no, but they were so thoughtful about why and why they couldn't and what their risks were, and to be treated like an adult and to have really thoughtful conversations behind the scenes. I appreciate it, because sometimes you don't understand the reasoning behind why a firm may not want you to, but right. Usually it comes down to compliance or liability. And so we had a great discussion, and it worked out fine. Like, I get it, and I get where the firm is coming from, and I felt like they wanted to say yes to me. There were just some issues with being able to properly regulate it and be in full compliance with the regulators, and so that's fine. I just want to be talked to like an adult, and that's usually my experience, which I'm really appreciative of.
Agreed.
So, any final thoughts for anyone that's thinking of going independent that you were hoping to share today?
Yeah, look, final thoughts, really simple. Like, so if you're going to I think everyone that's in the captive channel, if you are interested, you probably have some interest in owning your own book, truly owning it, right? Truly being a business owner, like regardless of what your firm is telling you, if you don't have control of your book, you are not a business owner, period. So if that's something that you're interested in and you're looking for more customization, more flexibility, more access to technology, access to products, and you're a good fit for that criteria, then you have to be honest with yourself and say, A, am I willing to fight for it, right? Am I willing to go through like a 6-month battle to get up to speed in a new firm, because I'm going to get, and my clients are going to get a higher payoff on the other end. And then the second thing is, we didn't really touch on it, but, being a business owner, there are now other responsibilities that you need to think about that your firm may already take care of. So things like payroll and, paying your quarterly taxes, right, to the IRS, like little things that, again, they're not a big deal, but you just have to realize that there will be some change there. And then, you're the third thing, the last thing would be you're the decision maker, right? So, if you want to use a different software, and you're used to your firm saying, look, you can only use this because this is what we say. Sometimes this happens to me, Drew. Like, I'm like, should I use this or should I use that? Should I switch? Should I not switch?
Yeah.
And then you can
decision fatigue.
Yeah. You kind of can get into a place where you're like thinking about using different tools longer than you should or you need to, because, again, like you said, decision fatigue.
Yeah, and look, this is part of the reason why we created True North, is that there are a lot of big decisions that have to be made, like payroll. Are you going to create a 401k for your employees?
Yeah. Yep.
How do you actually go about establishing an LLC? Do you hire an attorney? Which attorney should you hire? If you're going to do payroll, which provider do you go through? How do you do health insurance? Like, there's all these little factors that you have to think about, because ultimately you are an independent contractor, and thus you have got to create all these things. What Jason and I and Pat, now what you're helping out with, because you've been extremely instrumental with True North, and we view you as one of the key players, is that what we've done and what we're continuing to build upon is helping people be ready. So if they come over, you're not scrambling to figure out, like, we know a lot of attorneys that can help you out. So, like, we'll help you find the right attorney potentially. We can get you connected to a CPA that specializes in helping. Like, I know a CPA in New Hampshire, and she literally specializes in working with financial advisors. We also know another CPA that we've utilized for True North that understands the unique dynamic of being an advisor. And so we have this information that could be difficult to come across if you go completely on your own. Now, I do think for some people, going straight Raymond James is a phenomenal option. And if you're thinking of going independent, you don't want to be a part of a group, I would encourage you just to go to Raymond James. That said, for those of you that are like, I want all that independence, but I could use a little assistance, that's where we provide all this extra. I say this long, diatribe because these are the additional tangential services that will help you with, and that we really sought to help, you with, Pat, when you joined.
Yeah. The biggest thing is, like, if you're making that decision and you want to go independent, just realize it'll probably be, nobody can guarantee it, but it'll probably be one of the top 3 biggest decisions you make in your career. And I can say that confidently, probably closer to number 1 if we're being honest.
Yep.
But let's just say at least in the top 3. So if you're going to make that decision, you want to stack the deck in your favor as much as you can. And the infrastructure and support that you and Jason bring to the table, and our team now, because now we have 2 full-time on-staff support members that have, one has gone through a transition, so they know how to do that. It's as plug and play as it will get in terms of going into a transition. In terms of, hey, your job is to basically announce to your clients that there's been a change, and then from there you want to make sure you can hand that phone call off to the support staff where they're collecting all the information, they're getting the account statements, they're moving all those assets, because your time is most valuable, talking to your clients and announcing to your clients that, you're in a new spot.
Do you mind sharing how True North supported you through your transition from a staffing standpoint?
Yeah, first step would be just setting expectations, like, hey, here's what to expect. So that kind of calms you down, because again, you're nervous, right? There's a lot of jitters, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of energy going into that day. But once you're in the transition, it's like, hey, okay, Mr. Bob Smith said, how do I follow you? 1 second, I'm going to put, Amy on the line. I'm going to put, Lena, because whoever is there.
Yep.
And then they take care of all that stuff. And that could be a 15, 20-minute conversation, right? And those 15, 20 minutes, like, that time is better spent for you to announce the next person that you found a new home. Yeah,
I know Jason was extremely generous in lending some of his staff for you, and we came for a few days as well. But that we wanted you to have the most successful transition possible, and we actually put some resources and time with our staff in so that they were there to help you open accounts and keep the process moving. Because you're most productive when you're, fielding phone calls from curious clients. You don't want to be in a position where you're trying to open up your own accounts. That's where transitions can really break down.
Definitely. And Drew, one more thing too, I'd plug in there. So again, being a part of True North, right? So if you join True North, our office has the capacity to get another 3 advisors in open office spaces that are already, established, right? That we've built out, we've painted, we've put flooring in, we've done a lot of work. So, if people are interested in joining and they are in the general area, and you don't want to do all the work that requires, finding office space and getting contractors, we already did all that work, right? So we have those relationships, we have the space, and if you end up joining True North, like, you can plug and play not only with support staff, but also with space. And maybe that's a temporary thing, right? You're not locked in long term, but you can at least get established if you're ready to go independent. And then later on, if you want to get your own office space or you want to, do something completely different, then that's your prerogative, right? There's no one locking you in anywhere.
Exactly. And I know, like, we're also looking at it too in my physical space of hosting someone as a sort of a transition to then their own space, because sometimes you kind of need a place to land for a little bit, build your book a little bit, and then you have the sufficient resources to actually be fully on your own. Well, Pat, we are lucky to have you. You've been nothing but a superstar, and I'm glad you came to True North, and I'm excited about the successes we're going to have together in the future. Likewise,
man. Yeah, really appreciative of you and Jay, and like I said, this. I don't want to overplay it, and I'm not trying to, but I think when I look back on my career, I'll probably say that this was one of the top one or two, not only biggest decisions, but best decisions I made coming here because of the fact of everything we just talked about in this podcast. So just want to say appreciate you guys, and I'm super excited for the future.
Me too, brother. Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, man.
If you've enjoyed this content and you're looking for a wealth advisor, or if you're a financial advisor and you're looking to make the jump to the independent side, please message me on LinkedIn, or you can email me at drew.benson@bensonwealthmgt.com, or lastly, you can call my office at 603-316-2544. Securities offered through Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc. Benson Wealth Management and True North Wealth Management Group are not registered broker-dealers, and they are independent of Raymond James Financial Services. The foregoing information has been obtained from sources considered to be reliable, but we do not guarantee that it is accurate or complete. It is not a statement of all available data necessary for making an investment decision, and it does not constitute a recommendation. Any opinions are those of myself and not necessarily those of Raymond James. Expressions of opinion are as of this date and are subject to change without notice. There is no guarantee that these statements, opinions, or forecasts provided herein will prove to be correct. Investing involves risks, and you may incur a profit or loss regardless of strategy selected.